Take two, intimacy.
Ow!
Oh my gosh. What a nerd. Hi, I'm Beth Sri. This is my husband, Dr. Edward Sri. We are at the Malvern Retreat House near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we're giving a talk on marriage. We wanted to share some of those thoughts with you now.
Well, and one of them is a really fun topic here. You ready? So we want to talk to you about some of the best advice we ever received on marital intimacy. The best advice we ever received in this topic came from a celibate priest, one of our heroes, St. John Paul II. But some of you are wondering, like, why would you want to get advice from a celibate priest? They don't have much experience in this area. Well, as John Paul II himself writes about, he says that as a pastor, he has the ability to deal with a whole bunch of kinds of situations, many different kinds of couples, different ages, young and old, different personalities, different situations. And from that wide variety of experiences, certain ideas and certain challenges begin to emerge. We see certain patterns there.
So this isn't from us. This is from John Paul II. One of the things he talks about, which, get ready guys, because this is totally revolutionary. He says men and women are different. I know, shocking, right?
Revolutionary in our culture today, but pretty basic
Totally.
from Genesis 1:27. God made us male and female. We were made differently. And one of the things John Paul II writes about is how men tend to be more sensual and women have a deeper, richer emotional life. That doesn't mean that women don't have sensual desire. It doesn't mean that men don't have feelings. But women have a greater ability to enter into relationships, connecting with others, and a deeper desire for that. And so this can become a sort of space of tension in a marriage if we're not aware of that difference, because women have a great desire to connect with their husbands emotionally, connecting heart to heart before they connect in physical intimacy.
And I know as a stay-at-home mom, when I'm having a stressful day and Ted walks in the door and is, "Hi, honey, how you doing?" And I'm like, I'm not in a good place and I need him to enter into my world to figure out what happened, how did it happen, tell me more, how did you feel? That source of empathy and relationship. And I need him to draw it out and draw me into a better place. And I can't think about doing other things later that night if he and I aren't in that spot connecting. That connection is so primary and it needs to be deep and it needs to be a place where I feel comfortable sharing, you're comfortable receiving, and it just builds that unity.
Where I'm really investing in your heart throughout the day,
Right.
and throughout the week and throughout the whole of the marriage. It reminds me, you often quote Song of Songs.
Oh, Song of Songs 4:12. It says, your heart is a garden locked, my sister, my bride. And I really feel that as women, we have so much deep within us and it's oftentimes locked up and we don't even know what it is. And that's where we need our spouses to enter into our heart, to draw it up, to draw it out, and to just make it visible for us and for them.
I want to challenge the husbands here because I want you to realize you do not fully understand how much your wife needs you to enter into her heart. You can't fully understand because you're not wired the same way she is. Think about your own experience, right? Men, if we tend to be more sensual, and we may sometimes wonder, well, how come she just doesn't want to do it tonight? Doesn't she understand that this is important? And, and she's like, well, we hear this from many couples, especially many years into a marriage, many kids into a marriage. There's certain times and seasons in a marriage where the wife may be less interested in this. And so when the man wants to do this, she's like, well, didn't we do this last week? And you're like, well, doesn't she understand? Well, realize she's feeling that way all the time on the emotional level. She's longing for you to enter into her heart. And if we can't have that heart-to-heart connection, then whatever happens in physical intimacy will never be what it's meant to be.
And just to flip that around so that men can continue to understand, like the idea of being touched at night, sometimes for especially moms who stay at home with younger children, that just doesn't sound great because she's been touched all day. If she's nursing a baby, if she has a toddler she's carrying around at the hip, if she has kids on her lap reading Goodnight Moon for the 72nd time, there's a lot of touching that happens from early morning to late at night. And then you want that? Just where she's coming from. Yeah,
so it needs to be a time of transition, a time of really entering into her heart. And this is what John Paul II writes about. He talks about how there needs to be a healthy emotional climate in the marriage.
And this is where I think of sex as a sort of barometer of the marriage. And I don't mean sex isn't just the act. I mean the before, the during, and even the after is a barometer of where you're at in your marriage. Because in order to enter into that vulnerable act, you have to really make yourself available. You have to go into other places that may not be as comfortable or as familiar. So are you willing to be vulnerable before, during, and after, and then stay and remain in that place of closeness and connectedness?
Yeah, John Paul II, when he writes about the nature of the marital act, he describes how it's not just about physical pleasure, but that physical union is meant to express a profound personal union, indeed maybe even like a spiritual union, that in giving their bodies to each other, husband and wife are really giving their very selves to each other. And so the marital act is meant to, this physical union is meant to be ideally an expression of what already exists heart to heart in a union between husband and wife on that heart to heart level.
And sex isn't a Band-Aid. It's not for when things aren't going well, you're frustrated with each other, oh, let's just go hop into bed together. No. Oxytocin is a powerful, fantastic hormone, but it can't cover up all the bad things within your marriage, and it's going to fade away. You might have that profound experience of union, but it's not going to last.
Yeah, the deeper wounds, the deeper hurts and difficulties you're having in your marriage don't go away just by having marital intercourse. You need to go after the deeper things. Again, John Paul II, we need to develop that healthy emotional climate. Now, another thing St. John Paul II says is that husband and wife, ideally, in the marital act, should strive to reach climax together at the same time. The harmonization of the orgasm. Now, that's an ideal, and it's not always possible, John Paul II admits, and it's certainly not easy to achieve because, again, men and women are different, especially in this very area. John Paul II talks about how the process of arousal is different in a man and different in a woman. For a woman, it's very slow, it's gradual, it involves her whole being, and she needs to be in a good space emotionally and to be able to fully enter into it. For a guy, it's pretty much like they can just be ready to go. It could be immediate. They're not worried about is the baby crying or a dish is done. That's just not as important. But a woman needs that care and attention for her to be able to really enter into the act.
And a point that beautifully illustrates this is getting ready to catch a flight early morning. Ted will have to be out the door at 6 o'clock in the morning. He sets his alarm for 5:50 a.m. 10 minutes to get up, brush his teeth, get dressed, and he's out. Me, I need at least 45 minutes. Get up, get dressed, get ready, but then a kid will wake up, or then, I gotta unload the dishwasher. What about the coffee? Oh, somebody made a mess here. All the things that my brain is thinking through, that my brain is responsible for, that my heart wants to provide so many good things for. It's all encapsulated in me. And so it takes longer to get to where I need to go.
So this is where St. John Paul II says men are called to virtue. Virtue in the bedroom, in the process of leading up to the marital act. Men are called to great virtue, to great patience with their wives, to great self-control, to great generosity, and what he calls loving kindness. This is where a husband can really profoundly express love in a non-sexual way, but in the context of sexuality. And so let's just think about this. As men, we want our wives to be fully engaged in the marital act. We don't want them to be, just an outlet for sexual release, but that's what happens when we don't take time, when we are not virtuous and we just rush the marital act. And so St. John Paul II says that men need to take time, and sometimes a lot of time, more than we think. He writes about how men need to take time preparing their wife for this act through touches, kisses, caresses, and it may take longer than they think. He also says that women are living in a different world in this, and when it comes to the process of reaching arousal and moving toward climax. And we as men need to get to know that world. So John Paul II writes about how the man should be watching and paying attention to her reactions, and even ask her what's helpful. What is it that would be helpful in moving toward climax?
So men can be a sort of detective in paying paying attention to observing and making deductions. But we women, according to John Paul II, also need to educate the man. We need to be vulnerable and communicate, and that can be really, really difficult. And it's important to remember that there is no shame in not reaching climax. You're not a failure if you don't reach climax. In fact, by and large, the wedding night is generally not awesome. But the good news about that, the flip side, is you have your entire lifetime together in your marriage to reach awesome.
It can be awesome for some couples, but there are many times where it's not, and you're having to work together and figure out how does this work well together. And there's different seasons in life where you have to figure it out again, and that's all okay.
Yep. You have the whole of your marriage to work towards that, to grow, to learn, to make mistakes, to have victories, to have setbacks. But it's all a part of the process. It's all a part of the process. And even within giving yourself, especially to the women, there are sometimes we just don't feel it. But it's important to remember that this is a way that we can give ourselves to our husband, that they truly appreciate, that they truly need. And now there are valid reasons to say no, but I think there's also very valid reasons to say yes. So I just want to encourage women, it's a gift of self, and you're giving yourself to your husband who loves you, who said yes to you, who's committed to you, and that is a very good and holy thing.
And I want everyone, both husbands and wives out there, to really understand that the pleasure of the sexual act, how awesome it really is, isn't the real heartbeat of your marriage. Not every marital act is going to be a bunch of fireworks going off, and that's okay. And again, not to feel shame, not to feel like you're a failure. I think it's important we realize the most important part of marriage is how you're living it day to day, how you're growing in love, you're growing in virtue together, you're serving each other, sacrificing for each other, forgiving each other. That's the real heartbeat of a marriage. And sometimes in our overly sexualized culture, we place too much emphasis on the marital act itself. Now, these are some of the insights that we write about in our book called The Good, the Messy, and the Beautiful, The Joys and Struggles of Real Married Life. And there's a lot of joys and a lot of struggles, even in the sexual sphere of a married life. So we write about that. You can learn about that more in the book. And on behalf of all of us here at Ascension Presents, we just want to thank you for watching, and may God bless you, and may God bless your marriages.